Hello, and thank you for listening in to our Microsoft SharePoint Mosaic product demonstration. In this demonstration, we will briefly talk about what the Mosaic Web part is, as well as what capabilities and functionalities does it have within the configuration. You can see that when I open the configuration for the Mosaic Web part, it is broken out into multiple different sections for you to go and configure it. There's a story section, a theme section, a category section, an advanced settings section, a font section, and a migrate configuration section. When you're done making any changes, you can always press the Save All and must press the Save All button, as well as republish the page for those changes to stick. If you need to always cancel, you can as well too. But let's now jump into the first section within the web part configuration, which is stories. First, let's talk about the Mosaic Web part. The Mosaic Web part is what you could see up here, which looks like a story or grid laid out within a web part. The Mosaic Web part displays visual content and text in a responsive as well as dynamic masonry layout. Users are able to declare the importance of each story by assigning one of the various sizes to each story or item. And then all items are automatically arranged for the best fit, but they can always be moved around as desired. You could see here that I have a bunch of different size stories within this Mosaic Web part. The Mosaic Web part also has different style options and customizable features to best match your community's visual identity and brand. Now, let's jump in to look at the configuration of this web part. When I click on the Stories tab to expand the section, I can see the stories that I already have configured and that we're showing in this mosaic right behind the configuration screen. I can always add a story, which I'll show in a second, but in this example, I'm also going to show that you can easily edit a story as well. So anytime you need to make any changes to any of your pre-existing stories, you simply click on that pencil to edit it. When you're done making that change, you can click Save Story. You can delete the story if you need it, or maybe you didn't mean to click in here and you could just click Cancel to get back out. Now let's actually go through and add a story. You have three styles to choose from: fade, classic, or flat. You can see right behind this configuration screen examples of all three. This right here, the new View Updated Insurance Policies, is the flat story. It's just a flat color, no images or graphics or visuals associated with it. Here you could see the fade. There's really no color and it really just fades into the image. This here is the classic. The classic has a color bar at the bottom behind your title. As mentioned, you can also configure the size of the stories, so they could be small, tall, wide, or large. So we saw a couple of those behind, right? This is our wide one, this is our small one. The one over here on the right was our tall one. You can also associate the story with a predefined category, and we'll cover the category section in just a little bit. But once you've defined a category, you can choose to display a category with a story. So for example, you could see the resources and attention category being associated with those two stories, and they display within the story. This color area also refers to this themes area down here, which again we'll get into shortly. But you can set predefined themes for each of your story. Note that you can have multiple themes, but only one can be applied to each story. So the theme I'm using in all of these stories is my light green. So if I wanted to go ahead and create this new story, I could select that light green to be my theming for that story. This link field is actually where you enter a link of where do you want this story to take your user when they click on it. So it could be somewhere within the SharePoint site, it could be external as well. You also have the option to say, hey, I want to open this link in a new window or not. The display is where you actually set the image URL, so what image do you want to show in your story? This title and subtitle field refer to if you would like a title and a subtitle on your story. They are not required, so it can really be used however you see fit. In this example, you could see the new View Updated Insurance Policies is my title. The text below it is the subtitle, View our Updated Insurance Policies here. So that's where you can enter the title and or subtitle for your story. Now let's take a look at the theme section within the web part configuration. As mentioned, you can have multiple different themes set in this area and add more as you see fit. You can see that each theme allows you to give it a name, as well as a story color, a border color if you desire, a title text color, a subtitle text color, a category band color, and a category text color. In some of my examples, like these ones here, the browse resources and the view updated policies, you could see that I was using this light green theme that I created. I entered in this hexadecimal value for this green story color, and that's what you're seeing behind here as well as on the bottom. I did enter a story border color, and again, this isn't an empty story, so it's not showing anyway, but I still entered it to be safe. You could see I also entered the title and subtitle text colors to be this almost black color, kind of a little bit gray. And you could see that that color is reflected here with my title and subtitle. The same with the category band color. I set that category band color to be that lighter gray, almost black color. And you could see that behind resources and attention, it is that color. And then again, of course, the category text color as well. So you could see that my attention and my resources are a white color as defined here. Now let's look at the category section within the web heart configuration. Like themes, you can add multiple different categories, but also like themes where only one theme can be applied to each story, one category can only be applied to each story, right? So that's what we saw before if you look back in the story section. You can add as many custom categories as you would like with whatever name you would like. You have the option between the preset icons that are here. You can upload a custom icon as well, or an SVG file for an icon. In this instance, I went with the preset icons and I searched on a specific thing. So you can search through the library and the database, and then you could scroll and select the icon that you'd like to display. You see that that icon displays with the category name right next to it to the left. So my light bulb and my book are shown here, and those are my categories as well as the icons. Now let's look at the Advanced Settings tab within the web heart configuration. You can see the first option I have is the columns count. This columns count indicates how many stories do you want to go across within this area. So currently I have it set to 6. In this instance, the wide story counts as 2 columns. So that's why I had to set it to 6 so I can have it fit as I wanted. The height refers to the overall height of the mosaic. So, how much space do you want this to take up? There are 3 options for a hover effect. You can either do opaque, shadow, or focus. Right now it's on opaque, which means if you hover over a story, that story will slightly have an opaque background or almost an indication that you're hovering over it. The shadow will shadow the story you're hovering over, and focus, which is the default one typically, will just focus on the one story that's selected, and the others will be maybe a little bit grayed out or have some opaqueness on them. You can decide to set rounded corners and the size of the rounded corners for your story. So in this instance, I didn't want to have rounded corners, but I could have small rounded corners on all of my story, for example, or I could have medium or large. As you can see here, and it even indicates, the gutter really is that gap between your stories, right? So this little white space that you see here, it could be set to 0, so all your stories line up with one another. But in this instance, I wanted a little bit of space to indicate that they're separate stories, so I gave it a gutter of 5 pixels. But you can enter any numerical value in here that you would like. You can decide to turn font smoothing on or off, and again, as it says here, it really is just at the pixel level. It's for designers if you want to include that font smoothing or not. This option for the mobile or narrow column display is if you're on a mobile device or this web part is displayed in a narrow column instead of a wide. How do you want these stories to display? Do you want it to be a slider where you have an arrow to go through each story? Or do you want it to be a list where they're all stacked on top of one another? If you set the slider, you have the option of what is that interval. So how much time is that slide up before it moves on to the next one in terms of seconds? And then the same with the transition. What do you want that transition slides to be? Do you want it to be 1 second, half a second? Again, this can be entered to fit your needs. For all your stories, you can set a title and subtitle alignment. So in this example, I set everything to the center, but you could also left align everything or right. You also have the option to allow a custom web part background color, and that just applies to the space that this web part is in, right? So if you want to allow it and you enable it, then you can go ahead and enter that custom background color with your hexadecimal value. This area here, which is the opacity for classic style and the opacity for fade style, is how opaque do you want this area behind the browse resources to be, right? So in this example, it's a classic style. Right now I have it set at 80%, but I could turn it down so that there's really no color behind it. or I could turn it up more so it's more of a solid color. The fade style is similar, right? So I have mine turned down to 28%. You could see here that there's a little bit of color on the bottom, but again, it's really not showing as I've set it to be low for opacity. The last section in this area is the customized margins, and this allows you to enter number values. So you can see I could use the arrow to go up. I can also come in here and replace it by typing in a number. So you could do that for the top, the left, the bottom, the right. It can really be done for any side for this web part. Now let's look at the configuration of the fonts tab within this web part. You can see that I have control over what font is used for the title, right? So the title here on any story, the subtitle text. So in this example, you can see this story has subtitle text, view our updated insurance policies here, as well as category. Currently, we selected a Google font and searched for the Google font that we wanted, set the subset of the font, as well as the weight and style and the font size. If you don't want to use Google font, you could also use basic font and select the font from the predefined font selections here. Otherwise, you are always welcome to upload a custom font using a WOOF file, WOOF2 file, a TTF, or an EOT file, and that'll be applied to all of the titles within your Mosaic. And again, the same thing can be done for the subtitle font as well as the category font. Now let's take a look at the last tab within the web part configuration. This tab is called Migrate Configuration. So let's say that I already have this Mosaic developed and I really want to reuse it on another page of my site. It's pretty close to what I already have and I don't want to go through all the work of setting it back up again. What I could simply do is from this Mosaic that's already configured, I can copy that current configuration. I could click copy to clipboard. I can navigate somewhere else in my site where I want to add another Mosaic web part. I'll go back into the configuration of that new Mosaic web part. I go to add new configuration and I can simply paste in my copied configuration code and click apply to have all of that brought over so I don't have to go back and reconfigure everything. Thank you so much for listening into this Mosaic web part product demo. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.